Welcome, brothers and sisters, to Groove Beyond Podcast. This is our very first podcast, and I'm so glad you could join us. And today, I have a very special guest, Nikko. Nikko, won't you join us? Let's see if I can get Nikko on. Hey, Nikko, how's it going?
Hey, it's going good as always.
I'm glad you could join us today on our first ever Groove Beyond podcast. You're our very first guest, and I'm so privileged to have you and all the knowledge that you have. I'm really excited to have you as our first guest. So, welcome.
Well, it's good to be here. And I guess, well, the biggest question would be, what was your whole thing for starting this podcast in the first place? Like, what do you wish to achieve out of this?
Oh, well, basically, I had the idea of starting my channel a few years ago, my YouTube channel. And I kind of started getting frustrated with my ability to answer people's questions, really. I would just get so many questions about people's how I healed myself. That's a whole another can of worms, but really that's what it was. I just wasn't able to answer everybody's questions, and I thought, what a better way than to start a podcast so that people who real life people just like you and I who have real life health issues may want to ask me questions on how I basically learned to ditch doctor's orders and
Yeah.
take a different route, really. And so,
Well,
because of all those questions, I thought, hey, how about a podcast? That's so much easier than trying to answer individual emails.
so you kind of have been healing in your own way and all that. So, how exactly do you do that? And I guess more importantly, how, what exactly made you sick, or like how did you get sick in the first place? Like, what was that?
Well, okay, like most people who have an autoimmune immune disease or any chronic illness, that could be anything from psoriasis to eczema to lupus to you name it. If you have a chronic illness, which a whole lot of Americans do, I learned that it's due to ongoing stress. And it could be low grade, it could be massive. It just depends on the individual's particular life and
Right.
life story. So mine included a whole lot of stress as a child, and it just was an accumulation of life, really. And abuse. I abused myself with alcohol, and also, there was a whole lot of stress growing up as a child, things like that. And I believe that you store stress in the body, and that manifests into disease. And so when I started getting really sick, that's when I decided I needed to learn quick how to do something else because the pandemic hit. And frankly, my doctors weren't available and I was getting sicker real all the time. By the moment I was getting worse. So I decided to take the bull by the horns and learn how to heal myself because I knew that, I mean, I'd heard that other people had done it, especially in ancient times. It seems to have been kind of a thing. And I always thought that that was just kind of mythology or maybe not a
Mumbo
real,
jumbo.
yeah, maybe
I
not a
know.
real thing. But here's the thing: desperation will make one do desperate things, and because my doctors literally were not available to me, and I was literally going downhill real quick physically. I was getting sick. I wasn't able to walk. I wasn't able to hold a pen. I wasn't able to dress myself. I was really getting bad. Rheumatoid arthritis had set in, and I had liver disease, and I had what they call a leaky gut, where literally your fluids, instead of staying inside your organs, are leaking into the cavities around the organ. And boy, that's just all a sign of disease and your system not working correctly. So I learned how to heal myself, bottom line, out of desperation, because there's no doctors available right when COVID hit. All my appointments were canceled. And at first you would think, oh, what great luck, right? And now what? I mean, I could barely walk. But the thing is, because of that desperation, it made me go online and start researching other ways to heal yourself. And
Well,
I
well,
learned.
I mean, you say like that you kind of took the bull by the horns, um, and that you kind of did this whole thing. I take it that this kind of the whole reason why you even wanted to do the whole channel in the first place. You wanted to reach out and
Yeah.
kind of explain to others how you do this. But I put myself into the position of like a doctor and all that, and like what do you think? Like, what did your doctors tell you if about your disease and your sickness and all that? Because what to me that would sound like a foolish move to really, like just
Yeah.
like if you're really that sick, like shouldn't
Exactly.
you do the what the
Well, here's the
doctors
thing
say?
too. Here's the thing too. I grew up in a medical family. My mother worked for a doctor, and I had worked for a doctor for years and years and years and years. All of us in our family were in the medical field one way or another. So naturally, I was taught to listen to the doctor, right? And so, but here's
Mm-hmm.
the thing, if I couldn't go to the doctor's office during COVID, I had to find some other thing. I thought I was going to die. I was really in a bad way. So, after I figured out that other people had learned to heal themselves, I thought, well, teach me, what is it, And so I started slowly putting two and two together and figured out that it was working for me. And there really was something to this, and it wasn't mumbo jumbo, and you really could learn to heal yourself without medications and having surgeries and all these other things the doctors were telling me that I must have and do. And
Up next on Groove Beyond, 5 things doctors don't want you to
yeah,
know.
yeah, they said you're going to have both of your knees replaced. You need a liver transplant, and your all your lab results are off the charts. You are a very sick lady, and you need to go to the cancer infusion treatment center and be hooked up to an IV several times a month for the rest of your life. But we can't do anything about it right now because COVID's on. So you're on standby. And I'm like, oh, hell no. After you get all that information, you're not going to just go home and wait for that appointment to come up after COVID. Who knew when that was going to be? I mean, it's still going on, right? So, and this was a couple of
Yeah,
years ago.
say
Yeah.
you're gonna have to get in line. Yeah, lines over there.
You got to get in line. Yeah, exactly. So there's the desperation right there, right? So I went home and I went on the internet and I just studied my butt off on all kinds of ways you can heal yourself without surgery and medicine. And lo and behold, the ancients have been doing it for thousands and thousands of years. It's nothing new. It's just that Western medicine doesn't teach us any of this. Well, big pharma, to be honest, has us by the huevos, right?
Oh,
By
of
the balls,
course.
yeah.
More
So
ways than one.
in more
That's a
ways
whole
than
nother can
one.
of worms.
I actually
But
had I actually had a doctor tell me right before I was supposedly supposed to have both of my knees replaced. The cartilage is gone. That's bone on bone. I'd have multiple surgeries throughout my life. I was told that's it. You need new knees. But then I went to this one doctor, and he said, "Okay, but here's like months worth. We have to get you ready. Months worth of physical therapy first." I'm like, "Wait a minute. If you're cutting it all out, literally cutting it out, why do I need physical therapy? Don't you need that afterwards?" Guess what his answer was? "Oh, well, everybody needs to be paid." And I thought, "Oh." Right away,
figures.
alarm bells went off. I thought, you crooked SOB. What a crooked doctor. everyone wants to be paid. This is my body, my life you're talking about. And so, needless to say, I didn't go back to that one. And needless to say, fast forward, I can do deep knee bends now, and I work in the garden. You know, I don't run foot races, but I didn't replace my knees, and I danced at my wedding this last June. So there's something to this learning how to heal yourself stuff. I'm not kidding. It really did work for me. And as soon as I saw it starting to really, I saw real results on my own body, I thought, oh, how come we don't teach other people this? This is ridiculous. All the money and heartache and stress that surgeries and medication cause alone, right? And
All the
not to
money.
mention the financial burden, right? I mean, how come we don't teach this? That you could heal 90% of this all by yourself. Well, so I asked one of my doctors that on camera and got her reaction. And she was saying, well, first she was astonished. She couldn't believe that I healed myself. And she looked at my lab results, of which I have another video that shows that occasion. And she looked at my lab results and she's like, "What did you do?" She literally could not believe what she was looking at. She didn't believe me. I mean, but
It does sound hard to believe,
it
really.
does. But I
You may be
have,
living, I mean, you're living proof of it, but
and of course they ordered.
how would you?
Of
I
course they
mean, like,
ordered more. They ordered more tests over and over to make sure. And lo and behold, my tests are all back to normal now. They're all back to normal now. I don't need any of that stuff they were prescribing me. I don't have to inject myself with Humira, which suppresses the immune system. Oh my God, what a terrible thing to do to your body. But yet, all of these medications are on commercials all the time and things. And it just makes you dependent the rest of your life on it. And once
well,
I
I saw it
started
on the
getting,
TV, so it must be true.
and when I get educated about it and learn that those commercials are just a bunch of crap put out there by big pharma, then you realize that they don't really have your best interest at heart. And besides that, they weren't even educated in what I'm talking about here. Most people will
No.
roll their eyes at you if you tell them, "Yeah, I healed myself from rheumatoid arthritis." Well, guess what? All doctors say there's no cure for that, and so they don't believe you. Well, I'm here to say, yeah, well, I might not be 100% cured, but I have use of my hands completely. My fingers no longer go in and out of joint. They used to pop in and out of joint all the time. Like I couldn't even pull my covers up in my sleep without dislocating my fingers. And talk about painful. Oh my God. Have you ever had a finger or a thumb dislocated? It's the most terrible pain. And then they would send me in to have injections in them to try to what a mess. And I don't do that anymore either. I haven't had to have injections in my joints for years now. And I can write my name. I'm very flexible. I can play the piano. I can do whatever I want. Sometimes there's just a little stiffness in the morning, but I'd trade that any day for the route I was going because prior to learning to heal myself, I literally could not grasp a cup anymore. I'd lost that ability, let alone hold a
Well,
pen and write my name.
this is something about the whole thing. And like I was saying, you're living proof of this. And the
Yeah.
general consensus around this whole thing is, you need to listen to doctors and you need to make sure that you follow the medication and everything, which sounds like the right thing to do. And to try to switch your mindset into something beyond, so to speak.
It's a groove
how
beyond.
how could you? Well, of course, but how do you? You might hear about this, but how do you believe in yourself and how do you trust yourself to go that route? Because it might seem kind of scary to be like, I'm gonna just do it. Like, what if it doesn't work?
I
Like,
know. I
how do you
know.
have that belief?
Yeah, right? Okay,
How do you
so
convince yourself?
you know what? It was a blessing in disguise for me. I don't want to bring up any painful things for anyone else who may have lost a loved one during COVID. But for me personally, it was a blessing in disguise because it forced me to learn something new. Like I say, I didn't really have a choice. They canceled all of my doctor's appointments all at once. Everybody closed. And right when I had all these terrible things diagnosed. That's right when everything closed. So, out of desperation, I went on the internet and learned. And because I accidentally had really good results, the whole thing was an accident. I had no idea you could do this yourself. Now that I know, I mean, when you know better, you do better, right? But that's just it. It wasn't I taught myself by learning from others who had already done it. That's who I sought out online. And I
And this
just,
is the other thing. Um, because I feel like a lot of people might think, especially doctors too, they might think this like maybe it's just a rare anomaly that,
yeah,
okay, well, maybe you were able to do it, but
right.
how could I do something like that? Like, is maybe this is just a special case, like I don't know if I could do it. Like, could anybody just do that? Do you have to somehow have, powers or whatever? I could
Yeah.
see how some.
Well, listen, uh, don't let my titles fool you. I mean, I am a Reiki master, but I healed myself first before I ever studied any of that stuff. So you don't have to have any kind of training. You don't have to be a guru or a Reiki master or anything like that. People have been doing this for thousands of years. Let me give you an example. By the way, all of this works with your
Nobody's born a master.
nobody's born a master, but you're born with internal rhythms. And your body is like a symphony. And it gets out of harmony. It gets out of tune. And that's because of stress. So, stress can either happen in your lifetime or it can happen in utero when you were inside your mother's belly. Say your mother and father fought all the time while you were still inside her uterus. That brings stress. Also, there's what they call stress that comes down through your family lines that's carried over generation to generation, generational stress.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So who knows where it comes from? And you know what? You could analyze that to death. But to me, I figure, okay, that's a fun exercise if you want to analyze it to death of where did it all come from. But the point is, do you want to be better? Do you want to get healthy? Do you want to not be disabled later on in life? Well, that was my question. That was the bottom line for me. So I kind of quit analyzing how did all that happen. I analyzed it more after I got better. But the first it was like put the fire out first. First you got to learn how do you do this because I'm getting sicker by the minute. And the answer was to straighten out your vibration. And I know that sounds cliche, like 60s, man, it's all in the vibes, right? Yeah, it's groovy. Well, I chose that name, Groovy Kim, for a reason. To be groovy to me, or to be in the groove, has to do with vibrational aspects, right? And
Hmm.
yeah, and so everything in the universe is a vibration, and we all know this. By 2022, I would hope and think that most people know that everything is a vibration, including all of us and our bodies. And they get out of tune, like I say, from anxiety just through everyday life and stresses, let alone traumas, right? That's a whole another level of stresses. And if you don't process it correctly, you store it in the body, just like you store fat. If you're not processing it out, it gets stored and it accumulates, right? And over time, now you get inflammation. And if inflammation is allowed to accumulate and last and become chronic, now you got disease. And once,
Just like the river, the water must flow.
So let me show you a quick example. Everyone knows that if you are super stressed out, you can make yourself sick, literally. If you go, oh my gosh, oh, what's next? You will raise your heart rate. You will actually change your body's physiology. Your breath will change. All your metabolism changes by your emotions. So if you're upset all the time, you are releasing cortisol, which is a stress hormone. There's a whole bunch of other ones, but cortisol is the famous one we all know, right? So I'll use that as an
Hmm.
example. There's literally dozens of them,
Just general stress causing things.
but if you are happy and you're excited or you're just in love with life itself, you release a whole nother cocktail of hormones and chemicals. You are your own pharmacy. And when you're happy and you allow yourself to enjoy life and not be stressed out about it, your body can go back into healing mode. And you are literally straightening out your vibration so that it's no longer staticky like this. Now it has harmony. It's groovy, right? So
Hmm.
right? So learning to heal yourself is learning to be groovy and go with the flow. All of those symbolic words that we know that really just mean be in harmony and in touch with your feelings and yourself and to process things and not store them up because that causes
Dance
dizzy.
with the song.
Yeah. And dance. Music is a wonderful way to release pent up anxiety and stress.
Well,
Yeah.
that's it right there.
Yeah.
Ones who dance seem crazy to those who don't hear the music.
Yes. I was a dancer as a kid, but it all got interrupted because of my knee problems. So it's like my soul knew what to do. Always dance, always sing, always enjoy life. But I had all these stressors around me. I had all these stressed out parents and grandparents so that can knock somebody down even if they have a light spirit. And for me, I'm an empath, so when others are upset or they're going at it or they're angry or they're sad chronically, it literally settles and rests in my body, and I have to work really hard to create a vibrational field encompassing my own body to protect myself. And that's another technique that I use to keep myself from going back into the disease state that I was in.
Hmm.
Yeah. So that's why I started my channel, to make a long story short, was to show other people just like you and I mean, I'm nobody special, just like you and I, that it can be done. By
So this group
gosh, it can
beyond,
be done.
so the group beyond podcast is going to be kind of the same sort of thing, but um, I guess
But
podcast version,
yeah,
really.
well, and also we're gonna groove beyond, man. We're gonna talk about all this kind of stuff of how vibrational fields work and the Akashic field and how you might tap into that for yourself in your life. But we're gonna tap into all kinds of real
Beyond the physical.
beyond, dude. I mean, this is a groove beyond. We are going to tap on. We're going to touch on things like psychic abilities and astral projection. And one of my favorite topics I'm just now starting to get a grasp on, which I've always wanted to do for years and years. It just was beyond me. I never could quite understand. And that's astrology. I can't wait. We're going to do a few podcasts on astrology for the beginner, right? To kind of let my
Hmm.
audience kind of learn not only about your own sign, but what does it mean in your life, right? What does it really mean? Because I don't know about you, but I was always
Well,
I was always under the impression that astrology was kind of out there and
and I felt the
not
same
much
way.
truth to it. Let's put it that way, to say it nicely.
Yes, I mean, just like everything else, like crystals, the whole idea of vibration being
That's
everything,
another
how
one.
we're
Yeah.
all one. Like, what does that even mean? A lot of these, esoteric topics and spirituality as a whole, it's very. If you follow the mainstream sort of narrative, it's very easy to kind of just view it as either pseudoscience or just crackpot, you know, whatever. It's just a bunch of crap. Like, why don't you go get a real job? Why don't you go,
Yeah.
do whatever? Why don't you just take pills and work 9 to 5 like everyone else? Like,
Well, to me, astrology was just that little blurb in the newspaper. I remember newspapers, but yeah, dating myself here. But yeah, it was something that was just kind of silly and fun and to giggle at afterwards and go, oh, maybe once in a while it fit a little bit. But then we'd always say, but doesn't it fit everyone anyway, right? And so didn't really take it seriously until, until my dear Nikko, I started learning and studying with you. And I must say, I have turned a whole new I would, well, let's see. I don't know. I guess what I should say is a light bulb went off. I had the old ding. I'm starting to see some real value in studying astrology. Who would have thunk?
there's so many
Don't let
things
my
about
relatives hear you
spirituality.
or hear me.
There's so many things about spirituality and the
Yeah,
whole essence of it. The
yeah,
more and more I learned about it, it kind of is a rabbit hole of information. I'll find something
it
and it just
is.
blows my mind. Like, oh my god,
Yeah,
that's what it. No wonder. Like, how does anybody else see what I'm seeing? Like,
yeah. The
I'm not crazy, am
when
I?
you
Like,
start seeing all the parallels of what ancient man was trying to show us and teach us, and then the kicker is, it all relates to what I'm learning about how to heal myself. This, all of this stuff is related. It's just mind blowing, but way
because to me,
cool. Way
I
cool.
mean, to me, that's it right there. Not only is all this information interconnected, but the more I learn about these things and the more I, piece together and see the whole puzzle, I start to realize how many things we were taught as kids and how many things people generally know that
Yeah.
they don't see what it is, or they're just misconceptions about everything, and there's just these sort of rumors and sometimes just flat out lies really that are just thrown out there that
Spreading
discredit a lot of this
misconceptions.
stuff.
Yeah, I think the
Like,
misconceptions are sometimes spread, maybe not maliciously, but just ignorance,
no,
really.
but
I know
it's
I'm
just
I know I'm
if
guilty of
everyone
spreading ignorance as a child because I remember saying astrology, that's a bunch of crap. That's
I
spreading
mean, yeah.
ignorance when you don't know what you're talking about, right? Yeah.
And if you
But
and
it's
everyone around
everywhere.
you believes the same thing, then that's just what's
Exactly.
accepted. And if
Right.
you're not fitting that mold, then you're the odd one out. You're the crackpot.
And remember how I told you how I grew up in a medical family? So that's another example of that. When I first came to my mother, for example, and told her what I was up to, that I was going to just not listen to the doctor and do the cancer treatment center and have my knees cut out and liver transplant. And I don't even remember the
Yeah,
whole
that
list.
sounds inconceivable.
The list was terrible. I don't even remember the whole list now. Those are just the ones that stand out now, but there was more. But I told her, guess what, Ma? Not doing it. She was very concerned, as you can imagine. Same thing as I said, Ma, I ain't going to the hospital when I'm having my babies either. She was like, wait, are you sure? Wait, hold on. And I'm like, no. I
Because
studied
that's not what she learned.
midwifery. That's right. That's not what we learned. That's not what I learned either. But I now understand the ancients knew best. They knew
And it's
this.
not like they're wrong. It's just they just don't know.
Well, in Western civilization, which quite a few generations we've had here now, we we've had so many wonderful inventions, right? Like X-rays and MRIs and cool things we've never been able to do in medicine before, ultrasounds and all of this, which, by the way, are all looking at your vibrations, cardiograms, encephalograms, all of that. Vibrations, people. That's what they're looking at. Anyway, to treat it with chemicals,
Shh, don't let them
yeah, I
hear
know,
you.
don't let big pharma hear you. But to treat it with chemicals turns out isn't the way to do it. To treat vibration, you need to treat it with vibration. All right. Thanks for joining us. This is just a sample of what's to come on our new podcast. I appreciate you joining us. And
Oh yeah.
thanks again. And join us again. We'll let you know.
So
I think
sometime
probably,
in the future.
well, yeah, coming up in the next few days, we'll let you guys know. Hit the subscribe button and also hit the bell icon. That way you'll get notified for sure of when the next podcast excuse me.
So big pharma doesn't shut us down.
Hit the bell icon. You'll get notifications. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. I appreciate it. And yeah, have a groovy day.